Nick here from ThroneCompostingToilet.com, where composting toilets shouldn't be complicated, ugly, or expensive. Today we're going to be using our free plans to build our DIY base, which uses our custom plastic diverter. Let's get started. First step is we need to trace and cut all of our pieces. And this is a 3/4 plywood, a 2x8 section. We'll do the top, bottom, and the back. And then I have 3 1x2s. This, I have the tracing plans. I'm going to trace out and cut. And then for these spars, or the connections between the top and the bottom, need to be 18 inches long. You can do that with a speed square and a circular saw. A chop saw also is probably the easiest way to do it. You could also do it with a hand saw. So let's get cutting. Okay, we got all of our spars cut. So now it's time to trace out with the plans. So this is the tracing plans. And I like to use an X-Acto knife. You can use scissors for it. This works well too. If I wanted to make a rectangular box, you can do that basically using this tracing sheet. This would be your outside straight edge, this would be your front straight edge, and you just make it a rectangular instead of having a radius. But the opening position would still be the same. Like our first one I made for our house, it was just it was a box. I used leftover shiplap, corner trim, really simple to cover. I like to tape the back just to kind of hold it. Our old Airstream, we had a fiberglass bench that went across the back, so we couldn't, without tearing apart the whole bathroom, we couldn't do a traditional composting toilet. So that's one reason why we built one. So now I'm just going to go mark the center, and this is where I'm going to drill and then countersink. I got to do my inside opening. I'll need to do this on the top, but not the bottom. So the bottom, I'll just trace the outside radius. The bottom, you're going to have a little bit extra here, so these don't need to be, you know, right up against each other. Okay, I got my top and my bottom, and then we just need to do a straight line for the back. My outside edge looks good here, so I'm gonna just cut once. And so it is 9 inches. Okay, and then it's 18. All right, there's my back. So before I cut this out, I'm gonna go ahead and do pilot holes and countersink my top piece, 7/64. And then I have a little number 12 countersink. And then I really like to use these multi-purpose screws that have a really nice cutting slot on it. And then they have some little opposing threads on it to kind of pull any chafe that comes out as you're drilling it. And they're also star drive, T25 bit. I hate Phillips. They often strip out, so these work super well. Love these screws. All right, so I'm gonna drill my holes just in those little center marks that I did. Okay, next up is the countersink. And this just allows the screw head to sit just below the surface. While I have this kind of still in a sheet form and I can lay it on my little sawhorses here, I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole for this inner section so that I can access it. I'm going to cut out the inner, then cut out the outer so that it's just it's easier to stay on my table. I'm using a jigsaw, and I want a fine finish wood bit. It's not a super aggressive, and it's going to allow us to take this radius good. The outside edge. I'll probably do half, then move it, and then do the other half. So we got our top done. All right, we can cut our bottom. So lastly, we need to cut the back off. You could set up a guide with this, or you could just do it carefully freehand with the skill saw. And then again, I could use the skill saw to cut it, or I could just put it on the chop saw. There's our back. At this point, I'm going to match this up best I can and then screw this together. So these are some shorter screws that are not going to go all the way through. 8 by 1 1/4. If you don't want to go buy just a big box of each of these screws, check out our hardware kit, and we just have the hardware that you need for this. You can just buy a little baggie of it, and you won't have a box of screws that you're not going to use laying around. I'm going to line this up on the back. Looks good. So I'm going to do 2 in the back, 1 in the front. Pilot holes all the way through so I can countersink the bottoms. Move those over so that I can do these ones. Okay, my holes are extended to the bottom. I can countersink these now. I want to remember where these screws are because I don't want to countersink those ones because my sink will hit it. Move these back. All my countersink done for the top and the bottom. It's attached together, and you can see that some of these are not, like on this edge, it's not perfectly matching. So I'm going to sand this down. Ideally, you'd have a very aggressive belt sander that makes really quick work of it. You can absolutely do it though with a very gritty sanding block. Next step, I'm going to re-put my plans on the top, and I'm going to mark where the spars are going to line up. This makes it, installing the spars, much easier to have a reference point. Okay, so now we just remove our little holder screws. We have 2 radiuses that match pretty accurately. We have a top that's countersinked and guide holes. We have marks on the side. We have a bottom that's countersunk. We're ready to assemble our base. All right, we got screws in all these. Now we're ready to apply our spars in our back, and we'll have our base built. So let's get these together. All right, so we're ready to assemble these now. We can glue these up and then attach them. I'm not going to. The first few are a little tricky. I'm just gonna line up the two lines. And I have the screw sticking through just a smidge, so it kind of bites into that bottom thing. And then I'm just gonna slowly drive that home. So with the screws just sticking out just a smidge, I can kind of line up my spar and then push it down, and that kind of holds it in place. And then if I didn't have that, it would maybe slide around. Now that it's freestanding, I can just kind of fill in the gaps. So I like the look of metal on this, but really you could shroud this with anything. You could put plywood around the front, cedar strips. You could do some decoupage over the front and just urethane it. There's probably some kind of plastic material you could shroud it with. We just line up the lines. And these last few, I'm going to pull the screws out. It's getting tighter, and so my little nub sticking out is not helpful. Well, there's our finished base. So at this point, you can kind of do a little dry fit and see how everything fits together. The bucket goes in, slides all the way back. The jug goes in. This is a 2-gallon water jug. You could use like a bleach bottle or a vinegar bottle. With this 2-gallon jug, you slide everything forward, and then the diverter just sets on, everything lines up. So next up is to shroud it and get our toilet seat installed. So we have our base completed, and we have some aluminum flashing that we're going to shroud it with. This is some very thin shrouding. So it was a 24 inch by 25 feet roll, and so we just cut off a chunk of it. It was 52 3/4, and I'm going to wrap it around and then secure it. Okay, straps are ready to come off. So I have a piece of scrap aluminum here that I got from a friend. I got my top, and because this shape is a little bit different, I've belt sanded it to match the top and the bottom, but it's still a little bit different than my template. I'm going to use this to trace for the aluminum. So just simply put this on and then trace. Okay, so I'm ready to use my jigsaw to cut it out. I do not want to use the same blade I used for the fine finished metal. These teeth are really aggressive. I want a metal blade that is just, finer teeth. Okay, we got the top piece on, and we're going to install the trim. And it's we got this stuff off Amazon. It's just dead soft aluminum nosing, and it just bends really nicely around the top. Since we have the base secured, you just put it in place. It comes with some screws, and screw it in. You want to make sure that it's down all the way. The threads on this is not real big, so I'm using a screwdriver just to be a little more, have a little more finesse with it. So you're going to want a toilet seat, and it needs to be an elongated toilet seat. And every toilet seat kind of comes with different hardware, and all of the hardware is very long to fit through the big porcelain base of a toilet. Well, you don't want this hardware sticking down. It's going to interfere with the bucket. So it's going to have to be modified and basically shortened a little bit. I'm going to use a T-nut and have that in the back, and then I can shorten my little fastening hardware bolt as short as it needs to go, and then it fits in there nice and cleanly. And then this T-nut just lives in the base, and then I can easily remove it or reinstall it. I need to line up my toilet seat. I want the diverter, again, all the way forward, because that's where it's gonna, there's a little bit of room with it. I want it to be all the way forward. Trace around the back here so I know where to put my hole. So next up, you're going to want to have some type of ventilation system for your throne. This gives negative pressure within that cavity, drawing out any moisture, i.e. smell, from the space. And that's helpful when you're using it and between uses, just to keep smell down. If you're using proper amount of covering material, smell shouldn't be an issue, but that vent just helps. So the vent system would consist of a flange to attach to the back, some hose to connect to the flange, a simple fan, a carbon filter is a good idea, and you could also do some kind of inline blower fan attached to a potentiometer to be able to adjust the speed. So when you're using it, you could crank it up. When you're not using it, you could leave it just minimal to make negative pressure in that inside the throne. Check out our throne vent kit, or get some kind of pieces and make some kind of vent to vent your throne. The last step is to add your receptacles, your liquid jug and your solids jug, and it's ready to go. So to install this, you just remove your diverter, add your bucket, slide it all the way back, add your jug, slide it all the way forward, put in your diverter, and you're good to go.